Last year, a Chinese toy company's market value reached a full $40 billion. That figure far exceeds the combined value of Hasbro and Mattel, the two most established toy giants in the world. Most of that company's product catalog goes by one name, the blind box. In other words, boxes whose contents you don't know until you've bought them and opened them up.
And people are paying up to $2,000 on the secondary market for that small, fuzzy creature that comes out of those blind boxes, Labubu. The retail price is around $20. The gap between the two, 10,000%. And when executives see those numbers, they can't help but ask how it's even possible.
But the question they actually need to be asking is a different one. What is the psychological mechanism that creates this economy, and how do I apply it to my own industry? Today, we answer that question. Everything is on the table, from the real stories of Pop Mart and Supreme, to the biological link between scarcity and dopamine, to 3 concrete strategic steps for integrating this dynamic into your own brand.
If in-depth analyses like this add value to your work, the like button directly helps this channel reach more strategists. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new content.
Welcome to the Insight Atlas.
Let's put a scenario on the table. You walk into a meeting and someone tells you, let's not show the customer what's inside our product packaging. They can find out after they've bought it. In a normal business meeting, that person would be met with looks of disbelief and a lot of hard questions. And yet, Pop Mart turned that exact idea into a billion-dollar business model.
I'll be honest, I find that hard to believe because everything we've ever been taught in marketing says be transparent, be clear, show the customer what they're getting. Uncertainty kills sales.
And that is precisely where the great paradox of the collectible economy begins. Uncertainty, when framed correctly, doesn't kill sales. It transforms the urge to buy into one of the most urgent feelings a person can experience. In 2024, Pop Mart's Labubu series, also known as the Monsters IP, grew 726% in a single year, which means more than 8 times the sales of the previous year.
So what did Pop Mart do during that growth? They must have built bigger factories, diversified and expanded their distribution channels to reach everyone.
Exactly the opposite. Deliberate scarcity, limited production cycles, and that famous blind box model. A customer picks up a box from the shelf, not knowing which figure is inside. There were 17 different designs, each with a different probability of appearing. The ultra-rare secret figure has an appearance rate of less than 1%. This isn't the most talked about marketing phenomenon of 2025. It's a centuries-old understanding of human psychology taking perfect commercial form.
Let's look at the biological side of this mechanism. Why do people pay money for a box without knowing what's inside? And more importantly, why do they want to experience it over and over again?
The answer lies in the brain's reward system. Neuroscientists have known for a long time that dopamine, the brain's molecule of desire and anticipation, doesn't peak when you receive a reward. It peaks during the uncertain period of waiting for that reward. Not when you get something, but when you don't know whether you will.
So it's the casino logic.
Exactly. But in academic circles, it's called variable ratio reinforcement. Research on the psychology of collecting consistently shows that the blind box creates a gambling-like reward loop in the brain. And while that loop delivers short-term satisfaction, it simultaneously triggers the desire for the next purchase.
But we should also put this on the table. This mechanism might be creating a short-term consumption cycle. Don't collectors move on after buying the product once? So is this sustainable brand building or just a viral moment?
Great question. And the answer is in McKenzie's data. According to a 2023 McKenzie study, 70% of consumers who purchase limited edition products remain more loyal to that brand compared to buyers of standard products, because the struggle to obtain that product permanently elevates the meaning and value a person assigns to the brand.
So it's not just I got the figure, it's the awareness of I was able to get the figure that becomes a lasting identity marker.
Bingo. And that's exactly where we see the deep fault line between the collectible economy and the classic retail economy.
Classic retail asks, how do we make this product easier to sell? The collectible economy asks, what meaning can earning this product hold for the customer? Those two questions point toward entirely different brand architectures.
Let's take a closer look at Pop Mart's story, because this company overtook Hasbro and Mattel in a short period of time, and it did so with a far less diverse product portfolio. Its founder, Ning, opened a small concept store in Beijing in the mid-2010s. Today, the company is the world's most valuable toy company, with a market cap of $40 billion.
And Wang Ning's secret is this. He didn't think of himself as building a toy company. He built an IP, intellectual property, ecosystem. Labubu isn't just a figure, it's a character, an identity with a story, an aesthetic, and the ability to trigger the desire to complete the collection.
So how does this work in practice? A customer walks into a Pop Mart store or visits the online platform, and there's no standard shelf experience waiting for them. Instead, a sealed box. Every box is the same price, between $20 and $28, but the contents differ. There are 17 designs. Some are common, some are rare, and some are secret, with a probability of appearing lower than 1 in 1,000.
And on the secondary market, those secret figures can go for up to $2,000. That's 100 times the retail price. This isn't just a collector's curiosity, it's an investment vehicle. And that dynamic gives Pop Mart a massive, organic, word-of-mouth marketing machine. People post their unboxing moments on social media, generating organic content through unboxing videos.
And that's where the Lisa effect comes in. Lisa from K-pop group Blackpink posted a photo with a Labubu on Instagram in early 2024. She has hundreds of millions of followers. What happened?
That green Labubu model sold out everywhere. Secondary market prices tripled or quadrupled. And in the first quarter of 2025, Pop Mart's international sales increased 475% compared to the same period the previous year. 475%. That's a single quarter.
At this point, we have to ask, could Pop Mart have survived without that viral connection? Would the core model, blind box, scarcity, IP, have worked without the Lisa factor?
That's exactly where the real power of the collectible economy reveals itself. Lisa lit the spark, but the foundation was already there. Pop Mart was operating with the same model back in 2023. Labubu sales had already grown 100% year over year in 2023. Lisa took an existing psychological infrastructure and delivered it to a global audience. A systematic machine had been built. The celebrity endorsement pushed that machine to full capacity.
And that gives us a critical strategic insight. A viral moment isn't a stroke of luck. It's the natural output of a system that was built correctly. But now let's look at the other side of the coin, because the cost of applying this model incorrectly is just as steep.
Supreme, a name that started as a skate shop in New York in 1994 and transformed over 30 years into the world's most influential streetwear brand. If you understand this brand's model, you'll also understand why the collectible economy can be so fragile.
Supreme's model rests on two simple but genius rules: scarcity and consistency. Every Thursday morning at exactly 11 a.m., a limited number of products are released. No restocks. To buy, you either grab it immediately or you pay a much higher price on the secondary market.
And that model worked incredibly well. Supreme products sometimes sold on the secondary market for more than 10 times their retail price. A box logo hoodie, $158 retail, sold for between $500 and $1,500 on the secondary market for years. Looking at 2022 revenues, Supreme alone generated $561 million in revenue, with a limited number of stores and an advertising budget close to zero.
And then VF Corporation arrived. In 2020, it acquired Supreme for $2.1 billion, and that created the most painful case study in the collectible economy.
The logic of VF Corporation, a company managing established brands like The North Face, Timberland, and Vans, went like this. Why should a brand this powerful be limited to just a handful of stores? Let's scale it. And they scaled it. New stores opened, drop frequency increased, more collections, more collaborations, broader reach.
The classic growth play, the market share obsession, the exact same deadly cycle we saw in our scarcity paradox video.
Exactly. And the result? VF Corp recorded a $735 million impairment charge against Supreme in its fiscal year 2023. Revenues fell, and in 2024, Supreme was sold at a loss. They destroyed the value of that magnificent $2.1 billion brand in 4 years. Analysts summed it up in one sentence: scarcity and growth are oppositional.
That's a brutal sentence, but it's also an honest one. So what separated Pop Mart's case from Supreme's? Both operated on a scarcity model, but one is standing and the other was destroyed.
That's the most nuanced point in the collectible economy. Pop Mart embedded scarcity into a systematic mechanism. Opening each box triggers a new cycle of uncertainty. Completing the collection is nearly impossible because there are secret figures, seasonal special editions, so scarcity is integrated into the model itself. The cycle can continue even as the company grows.
In Supreme's case, scarcity came from a genuine limitation. Gebbia maintained it deliberately. When VF Corp stepped in, that limitation became an artificial corporate decision, and consumers felt it. As drop frequency increased, Thursday mornings stopped being a special moment. They became a routine item on a corporate calendar. Anticipation itself evaporated.
And that difference gives us the golden rule of the collectible economy. Scarcity must be a mechanism embedded in the model, not a policy that conflicts with growth. Pop Mart maintained scarcity while growing because every production increase was balanced with a new figure design or a new secret figure. Supreme exposed scarcity's fragility while growing because it expanded access to existing products.
Let's step back now and draw out the common ground from these two cases, because the insight here isn't just for companies that sell toys or streetwear.
Absolutely. The common core from both cases is this. People don't pay for a product. They pay for an experience, an identity, a sense of, I'm part of that club too. Pop Mart's customer isn't buying a plastic figure for $20. They're buying the feeling of, I managed to find this product. And the price of that feeling can reach $2,000 on the secondary market.
It's the same for the Supreme customer. Walking out onto the street in that box logo sweatshirt is a badge carrying the narrative, I caught the Thursday morning drop. Not the product, the struggle to obtain that product.
And this mechanism, the effort heuristic or effort intuition, is very well documented in behavioral economics. Our brains assign far more value to things we've worked hard to obtain than their objective worth. This isn't a preference, it's a cognitive rule. As effort increases, perceived value increases.
And that's exactly what executives are missing. When they say, let's make the purchase process easier, they're actually saying, let's lower the perceived value of our product. When they spare the customer from having to put in any effort, the brain simultaneously resets the respect it had for that product to zero.
To summarize, the secret of the collectible economy isn't scarcity. It's building a systematic desire loop. The effort put into obtaining the product itself becomes an inseparable part of the product's value. When you protect that, you grow. When you sacrifice it, growth destroys you.
So how do you apply this mechanism to your own company? Let's open an important parenthesis first. It's not possible to turn every company into Pop Mart or Supreme, and that shouldn't be the goal anyway. But it is possible to apply the 3 strategic principles of the collectible economy in almost any industry and at any company size.
Step 1. Break the infinite stock illusion. Many companies operate on the logic of, we have product, but we don't want to give the impression that. That's the wrong frame. The right question is, are you strategically designing which version of your product to release, in which period, and at what volume? A waitlist isn't an operational failure. When managed correctly, it's a powerful desire trigger. The sold out tag on your e-commerce platform can be a desire accumulator for the next launch.
Step 2. Turn uncertainty into a product. This is Pop Mart's sharpest insight.
The customer doesn't always need to know exactly what they're getting. It's enough for them to know that this experience will be valuable. If you're a B2B services company, this might mean not presenting every client with the same standard package. The approach of, let's discover together in our first strategy session what a solution designed specifically for you looks like, transforms uncertainty into curiosity and a status signal.
Step 3, and this is the most critical one. Embed scarcity into your system, not your policy. Supreme's mistake was managing scarcity as a policy. When VF Corp arrived, it changed that policy and everything collapsed. At Pop Mart, scarcity is coded into the model itself. Every production cycle includes a new secret figure. Every collection closes at the end of the season. Scarcity isn't dependent on a manager's decision. It's the natural output of how the system works. When designing this in your own company, ask yourself, can this scarcity easily be sacrificed when someone says, let's increase sales? If it can, it lives in your policy, not your system. That is fragile over the long term.
And the common denominator of all 3 steps is this. Give your customer the feeling that you can earn this product. The act of buying can be easy, but owning that product, living that experience, should feel like an achievement.
So let's bring it to a close. The great insight of the collectible economy is this. Customers don't buy products, they buy the meaning and status of owning that product. And that meaning grows in direct proportion to the effort spent obtaining it.
When you finish this video, when you look at your sales funnel, instead of only asking, how do I increase the conversion rate, you'll start asking, what experience, emotion, and meaning does this purchasing process give the customer? Does obtaining my product feel like an achievement, or does it feel like a delivery? Pop Mart answered that question correctly and reached a $40 billion valuation. Supreme neglected that question and experienced billions of dollars in value destruction. The difference isn't in the quality of the product, it's in the architectural design of customer psychology.
If this content added value for you, your like and subscription helps this channel reach more strategists. Both are free, but their impact on this channel's growth is significant.
We've reached the end of this episode on the collectible economy. If you're curious about how these psychological mechanisms apply to your pricing strategy, I'd recommend watching the previous episode in our Scarcity Paradox series. The link is below.
One more thing. At the heart of the collectible economy lies this question. Is a product's value determined by its objective features or by the first number that takes hold in the customer's mind? If you want to approach that question from the angle of price negotiation, our anchoring video, where we walk through how Bob Iger closed the Marvel deal at $4 billion, is made for you. In that episode, we examine step by step how the brain processes the first number and what power or vulnerability that mechanism brings to the table. The link is below.
Until our next strategy session, take good care of yourselves and your brands. Goodbye.